I see Donna. Donna's on. Donna, do you want to introduce?
Are we ready?
I see 2 minutes after three. I think we can get started.
Hey. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on the graduation requirements. It is always one of our biggest. I think one year we had over 1,200 counselors. I don't know how many right now we have, but I'm happy to see everybody here. It's always some great information. It is being presented by Melissa Montague, who is the associate in instructional services for New York State Education Department, and she always has some great information. And I also want to thank Bob for helping set this up, because without you, it would never have happened. Thank you. Okay, Melissa, take it away.
Hey, thank you. I'm going to ask Bob to stop sharing his screen so I can share mine. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us. I know that your time is valuable and we don't have enough of it. So thank you for being here today. And I wanted to start with a big shout out and thank you to the New York State School Counselor Association for facilitating this for us. As Donna and Bob have mentioned, we had over 1,600 people registered for today's event. So that would not have been possible without this collaboration. So we do thank you. Here's our agenda for today. So we'll start with the credit requirements. And then the bulk of our conversation will be around the assessment requirements, because that's really where the flexibility lies for our students in the current diploma requirements. We'll discuss the 4+1 or multiple pathway model, the 3 diploma types, flexibilities that were granted due to COVID, and then the traditional appeals safety net and superintendent determination options. We'll spend a little bit of time on endorsements and seals. We'll discuss our transfer students. We'll talk about the 2 exiting credentials, and then I'll share some resources that may be beneficial to your work. So as you know, our diploma requirements are twofold, and students must meet both the credit requirements and the assessment requirements in order to earn a New York State high school diploma. Students do have the right to continue their education for general education students through the end of the school year in which they turn 21, or until they earn a high school diploma. In July of 23, the Office of Counsel did release a formal opinion where the Office of Special Education recommends that school districts consider providing special education services now through the end of the school year in which a student receiving those services turns 22. So that recommendation for that additional year for our students who are eligible for FAPE. And because I meant to mention it in the beginning and failed to, I will share this deck and we will post it so it will be available for you. We'll send it out to all those who registered, but then we'll also post it with the recording as well. So our credit requirements. I know the majority of you on this call are very familiar with this credit distribution table that you see on the right. In most disciplines, students do have choice in the courses that they use to fulfill the credit requirements. So all students do need the 4 credits in English, but there aren't specific courses that are required. Students do need to be receiving instruction to prepare them to pass that English Regents exam or a NYSED approved alternative, but beyond that, there's no specific English courses that are required. In social studies, you see the social studies credit requirements are pretty prescribed. Most students will earn that credit in US history, 2 credits in global history and geography, and then the half credit in participation in government and half credit in economics. But there is flexibility in the regulations that does allow for the principal to use 2 units of study in social studies in lieu of that global history and geography requirement for students who are transferring from out of state or out of country in either grade 11 or grade 12. And then there's also flexibility for all students where the superintendent could allow for equivalent coursework, so that as long as a student has 4 credits in social studies and it's approved by the superintendent, a student could graduate using those 4 credits in the non-typical courses. Our science requirements do require 3 credits, and students must have at least 1 life science credit. So our students must have at least 1 life science credit and at least 1 physical science credit. The 3rd credit in science could be either life or physical. And students could also use a technology education course to fulfill either the 3rd credit requirement in science or the 3rd credit requirement in mathematics, but not both. Sprinkled throughout the presentation are your questions, and I would really like to express my gratitude to you for posing those questions ahead of time so that I can make sure that my presentation is tailored to your needs. So you'll notice there are I think there are 21 total questions that were asked prior to the presentation that are sprinkled throughout, and then we'll also have time for questions at the end as well. So this first question relates to the science credit requirements, and it's an ask for a review of the science requirements. And the question is it 3-2-1? So my understanding of the 3-2-1 is 3 science credits, 2 with the 1,200-minute laboratory requirement, and the student must pass 1 science regents exam. So because students are only required to, if they're working towards a Regents or local diploma, they're only required to pass 1 science assessment. There is no requirement for them to take a course that culminates in a Regents exam more than once. So the science credit requirements are 3 credits in science. They do need to pass 1 science assessment, which is a Regents exam or NYSED approved alternative. That 1,200-minute requirement is only required for admission into the Regents exam. And students who are using a NYSED approved alternative do also need to meet that 1,200-minute requirement. But beyond that, there's no additional requirement for students to enroll in another course with that additional lab requirement. The department does say that all high school level science courses should have laboratory experiences embedded in them if they do not have that additional 1,200-minute requirement. So we also have the 3 credits in mathematics, no specific credit requirements for math. The 1 credit in world language, we did have a question related to this as well. Are students with an IEP who are classified with a learning disability exempt from the credit in world languages? And if they are, does that mean they need another class? So if the Committee on Special Education has determined that the student's disability adversely affects their ability to learn a language and has recommended and documented on the student's IEP, then they may be exempt from that world language credit requirement. If a student is exempt from that 1 credit in a world language, then they would need an elective credit in place of that 1 credit requirement. Students who are exempt from that world language credit per their IEP are also exempt from the sequence requirement for advanced designation, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but they wouldn't need the additional 2 credits in a world language and a checkpoint B exam, but they also wouldn't need the 5-unit sequence in the arts or CTE. They would be exempt from that sequence requirement altogether for advanced designation. And students do also need that 1 credit in the arts, and that could be dance, media arts, music, theater, and or visual arts. And we did have another question related to this, asking to review the arts credit requirements. So we have been getting a lot of questions about this lately, and it is because historically, arts courses either had to follow a state-approved syllabi or be approved by the department, but that requirement is no longer in place. So students must earn 1 credit in the arts in any of the arts disciplines. And to award diploma credit for the arts, it must be aligned to the high school learning standards. It must meet the unit of credit and unit of study requirements and be taught by an appropriately certified teacher. As long as your school or district recognizes that an arts course satisfies those requirements, that course can be used to meet the diploma credit in the arts. Students could also use 2 half credit courses in the arts to satisfy that 1 credit requirement. Physical education is the only area that could lead to a student graduating with fewer than 22 credits, or for New York City public schools, fewer than 44 credits. And that is because our students do need to earn that quarter unit of credit for every semester they're enrolled in a New York State high school. And students do need to maintain that enrollment either through the end of their senior year or their 8th semester. So if a student is transferring in from out of state or out of country, they wouldn't need to meet that full 2 credit requirement in physical education. It would be reduced, which would therefore reduce the total number of credits that are required for their diploma. So if we had a student coming in from out of state as a junior in the fall of their junior year, they would only need to earn 1 credit in physical education, which would reduce the total number of credits required to 21. And we did have a question related to physical education credit. 2 you see here. So if a student cannot be physically enrolled in physical education, is an independent study acceptable, or are there other alternatives? And then if a student attends a community college their entire senior year, are they exempt from that half credit requirement in physical education? Could they take another elective credit to make up for it? So individual medical certificates of limitation have to indicate the area of the physical education program in which the student can participate. The school district's plans must indicate the steps that you're taking to ensure that that student is meeting the requirement for participation in their physical education program. We do not have any waivers or exemptions from the PE credit requirements. Students do have to earn that quarter credit for each semester they're enrolled. And then finally, we have the half credit in health, and then the 3.5 credit requirement in elective courses. This slide just highlights the ways that students can earn credit. So most often students are earning credit through the successful completion of a unit of study. That must include a minimum of 180 minutes of instruction per week or the equivalent, and we equate that to 108 hours for 1 credit. Remember that that is the instructional opportunity provided to the students. This is not an attendance or seat time requirement, so it's not the number of minutes that a student spends in seat in the class. Attendance policies and grading policies are both locally determined. There is no state attendance requirement related to students' ability to earn credit. So as long as a student has been enrolled in the course and they are able to demonstrate their mastery of the learning outcomes for that course, that credit can be awarded. There may be some local policies that connect attendance to earning credit. And then we have credit by exam, where if a superintendent deems that a student will benefit from the option without ever sitting in for a course, they can allow them to sit for a Regents exam. If they earn an 85 or above on that Regents exam and also successfully complete an oral exam or special project, those are designed by the school or district, then they can earn that credit by exam. The goal of the oral exam or special project is really to assess the knowledge and skills that would ordinarily be assessed in the course that would not be assessed on the Regents exam. We have our grade 8 acceleration, where students can take high school level coursework in grade 8. If they pass both the course and the culminating assessment, they can then earn that diploma credit. Independent study, where students can earn a maximum of 3 units of elective credit via independent study. Students can earn credit in the arts through their participation in performance arts groups, such as theater groups, band, orchestra. We also have the transfer credit reg, which we'll talk about later when we talk about our transfer students. Summer school, I like to remind our counselors, administrators, that students can earn both initial credit through summer instruction and makeup credit through summer instruction. And then we also have the makeup course credit reg here. And it's important to note that there is a lot of flexibility in what a makeup program could look like. It could be anything from repeating the entire course to direct instruction in the areas of deficiency for that particular student. So the design of makeup programs are locally determined, and they could vary based on individual student need. Okay. I think we're going to hold questions until the very end, just so that we make sure that we get through the content. And I have a feeling that we may go past 4, so we'll just keep rolling and then take your questions at the end. So we'll swing right into our assessment requirements. This is just a reminder that any student who's had the opportunity to complete a course that culminates in a Regents exam has the right to be admitted into that exam. We can't bar our students for disciplinary reasons or because their achievement is deemed to be unsatisfactory. The only instance where there's an additional requirement is in the case of the Regents exams in science, where our students do need that additional 1,200 minutes of satisfactory lab experiences. And we had a question related to the lab requirements for students who are transferring from home instruction or homeschooling. So you can admit students who are transferring from home instruction into Regents exams in science, and you can also admit students who are still enrolled in home instruction into Regents exams in science, as long as you have evidence that the student has met the laboratory requirement. And you could find that evidence on the IHIP, quarterly reports, or verification from their teacher. We did have a question related to the performance investigations and how the new science standards will impact that 1,200-minute lab requirement. So I did find information on the Office of State Assessments webpage, but at the end, you'll see some contact information for other offices. The tricky thing about the graduation requirements is they really touch many, many offices, but state assessment would clearly be the experts in this area. Our students will still be required to complete that 1,200 minutes of satisfactory lab experiences for admission into Regents exams in science. The investigations will help prepare students for that 3-dimensional scientific reasoning that they'll need to perform well on the Regents exam. And those experiences can also be counted as part of that minimum 1,200-minute requirement. And there is additional guidance coming from the Office of State Assessment related to the performance investigations as well. And there's a link there to a memo that has all of that information too, because I know there was a very specific question about that, so it is there. And then we have the multiple or 4+1 pathway model. So as you know, to meet our assessment requirements to earn a local or Regents diploma, students have to pass, appeal, or use a safety net to meet the 4 required assessments. So these are Regents exams or NYSED approved Regents alternatives. 1 in English, 1 in math, 1 in science, 1 in social studies. And now they have flexibility in the 5th assessment that they use to meet that pathway requirement. So we do currently have 8 approved pathways. In orange here, our students can pass 1 additional Regents exam or NYSED approved Regents alternative. And that is true for both the humanities pathway and the STEM pathway. So if a student passes an additional Regents in social studies, science, or math, or a NYSED approved alternative in English, social studies, science, or math, they can use that to satisfy that 5th assessment requirement. And then in yellow in the middle, if our students pass a NYSED approved pathway assessment, they can use that to satisfy that 5th assessment requirement. We currently have NYSED approved pathway assessments in the arts, in world languages, and in career development and occupational studies. And I did want to bring to your attention, if you haven't already seen, our Office of Bilingual Education and World Languages recently updated the pathway assessments in world languages that are approved. So students can now use any of the languages that you see here to satisfy that +1 requirement, as long as you're using one of the assessments on that list of NYSED approved pathway assessments in world languages. The blue languages were added in the summer, so that office has more than doubled the number of exams that students can use to meet that 5th assessment requirement. The pathway assessments in world languages are also unique in that students can use them to serve 2 purposes. So they can use them both as the +1 pathway assessment and as the checkpoint P exam that's required for that world language sequence for advanced designation. We did have a question from you related to the world language pathway. So if a student is using one of the pathway exams, to serve only as that +1 pathway, not for advanced designation, does the student the 3 credits or 6 credits for New York City Public Schools in the language. So to satisfy the pathway, students have to earn an acceptable score on that assessment. The Checkpoint B exams are designed to be administered after students achieve the Checkpoint B level of the World Language Learning Standards. While that's typically those 3 credits or 6 credits in New York City, it is up to the school to determine if an individual student is prepared for admission into the exam. And in green, we have our more programmatic pathway options, which we'll walk through here in a second. So the CTE pathway, the CDOS pathway, the civics pathway, and then the IAAP. So to earn the CTE pathway, students have to successfully complete a NYSED approved CTE program, which includes earning a passing score on the program's 3-part technical assessment. There is a list of NYSED approved CTE programs linked on that slide if you need it. You can find that on our CTE office's webpage, and they update it very regularly. This is just a reminder that in fall of 22, the department did approve computer science as a CTE subject. So that does allow computer science coursework to be used in multiple ways. So computer science coursework can be used to satisfy the middle level CTE requirement of 1 3/4 units of study. It can be used to satisfy the coursework requirement for the CDOS commencement credential through option 1. Computer science coursework could be included as part of the 5-unit sequence in CTE for advanced designation. And districts and BOCES can request to have NYSED approved CTE programs in computer science. Before we talk about the CDOS pathway, I'd just like to highlight the multiple roles of CDOS. CDOS can really serve 4 roles, 3 of which you see here. So the CDOS commencement credential can be used as a pathway to a diploma. It can be earned in addition to a diploma, and it can be earned as a standalone exiting credential. When it's earned either as a pathway to a diploma or in addition to a diploma, the student has to meet the credit requirements. They have to pass those 4 disciplinary assessments. So a Regents or NYSED approved Regents alternative in English, math, science, and social studies. If they successfully complete all of the CDOS commencement credential requirements, either through option 1 or option 2, they have earned it as a pathway to their diploma. If they complete another pathway and then also successfully complete all of the CDOS commencement credential requirements, then they have earned that credential in addition to their diploma. And then for our students who have attempted, but for whatever reason were not able to successfully complete all of the Regents or local diploma requirements, but they did complete those requirements for the CDOS commencement credential, either through option 1 or option 2, they may earn that as a standalone exiting credential. We do like to remind counselors, administrators, educators, families, students that is not equivalent to a diploma. And we never want to put students on a track towards earning the CDOS as a standalone exiting credential. So here's option 1 for earning the CDOS commencement credential. So to earn the CDOS through option 1, our students must have a career plan and employability profile completed within a year of their graduation. They must demonstrate their achievement of the CDOS learning standards, which is done through a minimum of 216 hours of CTE coursework, which must include at least 54 hours of work-based learning experiences. All 216 hours could be work-based learning experiences, but students must have at least 54. So if you think about that in terms of credit, that's a 1/4 credit in work-based learning experiences minimum, with a total of 2 credits in CTE coursework. The graphic on the right is just used to illustrate the coursework that can be used towards meeting the requirements for option 1 of the CDOS commencement credential. So it can be coursework in any of the CTE disciplines. A lot of times we think about this only as coursework that's done as part of a CTE program, but that is not the case. It could be any coursework in family and consumer sciences, technology education, computer science. So as long as a student meets those hour requirements, you could use a combination of coursework in various CTE disciplines to meet that CTE coursework requirement. And here we have option 2 for earning the CDOS, and that is the pathway assessment. So if a student meets the minimum requirements for one of these NYSED approved pathway assessments in CDOS, then they have earned the credential through option 2. We did have a question from you related to the CDOS pathway, and that was, how do I order exams that can award students the CDOS commencement credential, such as the 21st Century Skills exam? And the list of NYSED approved pathway assessments in CDOS does provide vendor information for each exam. You can find that, it's linked on this slide, but you can also easily Google it or find it on our webpage. And I did just put the contact information for our CTE office. If you have specific questions about these exams, they're the experts and they would be best able to answer your questions. Another question related to the CDOS credential relates to the CTE coursework that's required. And the question is, what's best practice for calculating the CTE coursework hours for the CDOS pathway or certificate? So you may be the best resources. I would encourage counselors to have discussions with each other about in terms of like how you track it, but in terms of what coursework could be used, as I mentioned earlier, it can be any course that's approved by your local Board of Education. It can be any CTE course that's approved by your local Board of Education. So in any of those CTE disciplines, and also taught by a teacher certified in a CTE content area. So courses approved by local Board of Education, courses approved by NYSED through the CTE program approval process, and then any school supervised work-based learning experiences could all be included. And as I mentioned earlier, our students do need that minimum of 54 hours of work-based learning, but all 216 hours could be work-based learning. Our other programmatic pathway is the civics pathway. And there is an application process for conferring the seal. If your district is not currently doing it, I encourage you to take a look and see what the process is. Most of what students need to earn the seal, they're already doing. So students are demonstrating their civic knowledge and civic participation through the selection of different options on a menu of items. So they could be earning credit in the social studies coursework, passing or mastering the social studies regents exams, completing a middle school or high school capstone project. So there are options for our students and how they go about earning that seal. And that seal can be used to satisfy that 5th assessment requirement. We also have the individual arts assessment pathway. This is a +1 graduation pathway option intended to provide a locally determined means for students to complete the arts pathway. So currently, the arts pathway exams are all AP and IB exams, and recognizing that not all students have access to those exams, the department did create the IAAP, so that as long as a student is demonstrating their growth in the arts over time through a 3-unit sequence in the arts, then they can use that IAAP to meet that 5th assessment requirement. Tons of information on our site related to the IAAP. So I do encourage you to take a look at that if you haven't already. So a question from you related to diploma types, and this is a good segue into our next slide. Can students use the CDOS pathway to earn the Regents diploma? So any pathway can be used to satisfy the assessment requirements for any of the 3 diploma types. So the CDOS pathway could be used to earn a Regents. It could also be used to earn the Regents with advanced designation. So here's our 3 diploma types. So currently students can earn the local diploma, the Regents diploma, or the Regents with advanced designation. They all rely on the same credit requirements, the differences in the assessments that are required, and the flexibility in meeting those assessment requirements. So students who are earning the local diploma are using additional appeals, safety nets, or superintendent determination option. Our students who are earning the Regents diploma, with the exception of exemptions and special appeals, are passing those Regents exams or appealing 1 in the all student range. And then for advanced designation, our students have to earn passing scores on all the required assessments. The special appeals and exemptions do apply to all diploma types, so students could use those COVID flexibilities to meet those requirements as well. And in addition to the 4+1, we have 3 additional assessments for advanced designation. So our students do need to pass a total of 3 assessments in math and 2 assessments in science, and they must have at least 1 life science assessment and at least 1 physical science assessment. In addition to the credit and assessment requirements for advanced designation, students must also complete a sequence. So that sequence can be the world language sequence, which is an additional 2 credits for a total of 3 credits in a language, and passing that checkpoint B exam. It could also be an arts or CTE sequence, which would be a 5-unit sequence in either the arts or career and technical education. And related to this, we had a question about which courses qualify as a sequence in the arts. So the 5-unit sequence leading to advanced designation is at the discretion of the district. So the department does not require specific courses to be included in that sequence. We do recommend that it begin with a foundational course and then advance through electives based on the student's skills and interests. But ultimately, the decision is made locally as to what courses would satisfy the sequence requirement. And it doesn't have to be the same for all students. We don't have specific course requirements to be included in either the 5-unit sequence in the arts or the 5-unit sequence in career and technical education. Another question related to advanced designation. Can a student receive an advanced Regents diploma if they passed all 3 Regents exams in mathematics and have 3 math credits, but never passed the Algebra 2 course? So there's no state requirement for students to pass Algebra 2 to satisfy the requirements for advanced designation, as long as they have the 3 credits and also passed 3 math assessments, Regents exams, or NYSED approved alternatives, then they've satisfied the requirements in mathematics for advanced designation. Okay, our flexibility due to COVID. As you know, there were many periods where students were granted exemptions due to COVID. If they were granted an exemption, they're not required to pass a different assessment in lieu of that. Those exemptions do remain with our students through their graduation and can be applied to any of the 3 diploma types. If you ever need to revert back to the FAQs from that time period, they are all linked here and also in our graduation requirements FAQ as well. Our special appeals, so any student who meets the following eligibility conditions can appeal to earn a diploma with a lower score on a Regents exam. The Regents exams for the special appeals must have been taken during one of these 5 administration periods. So that was June and August of 2022 or January, June, or August of 2023. They must have earned a score in that 50 to 64 range and also passed the course for which the appeal is being sought. If a student earned a score in, let's say, August of 2023 in that 50 to 64 range, as long as they pass the course before they graduate, they would then meet the eligibility conditions for the special appeal, and the special appeal can be granted. Because the appeals can be granted anytime prior to the student's graduation, as long as they pass that course before they graduate, they would satisfy those requirements. So a question from you related to special appeals: if a score a student received in the designated time period is between 50 and 64, is that score considered a Regents score leading to a Regents diploma? And then can special appeals be applied to the advanced Regents diploma? So as long as the special appeal is granted, it can be used to satisfy the assessment requirements for any of the 3 diploma types: the local, the Regents, or the Regents with advanced designation. So that appeals process does happen locally. The special appeals and traditional appeals are not approved by the state education department. They are approved locally. So you would just want to ensure before you kind of classify it as a score that can lead to the Regents diploma, you would want to confirm that it will be granted by the superintendent. And then a question related to our assessment requirements. And this question was, is the 55 for Regents exam still being honored for the June 2024 and August 24 administration periods? So this was a beautiful segue into our next section, which is traditional appeals and safety net options. So for January 2024 and moving forward, students can use the traditional appeal and safety net options. And that's why I think today's session was really important, because we haven't had to rely on these in years, and now students will need them again to satisfy the assessment requirements. So here are our traditional appeals, safety net, and the superintendent determination option. So remember, unlike the special appeals where students only had to take the Regents once, to be eligible for a traditional appeal, our students must have taken the Regents exam under appeal at least 2 times. They must earn a score in the appropriate range. So for all students, that's 60 to 64. For our students with disabilities who are seeking the local diploma, that's 52 to 54. And then for our eligible English language learners seeking an appeal on the English Regents only, 55 to 59. They must have taken advantage of academic help provided by the school and also passed the course for which the appeal is being sought. So this slide highlights diplomas via traditional appeal for all students. So all students can earn the Regents diploma via traditional appeal if they meet the credit requirements and then meet the assessment requirements using one successfully appealed Regents exam score in that 60 to 64 range. And remember, this can be on top of any exemptions or special appeals. And then the local diploma via traditional appeal for all students, the student is meeting the credit requirements, and now they're meeting the assessment requirements using 2 successfully appealed Regents exam scores in that 60 to 64 range. And again, they can have 2 traditional appeals in that all student range on top of any exemptions or special appeals. We had a lot of questions about our English language learners or multilingual learners. Here's the local diploma via traditional appeal for English language learners. To meet the assessment requirements, the student can use eligible students. So these are students who've entered the United States in grade 9 or after, and were still classified as an English language learner when they take the English Regents the second time. They can appeal an English language arts Regents exam score in the 55 to 59 range. Because we've dipped below that 60 threshold, this will lead to the local diploma. So the student can also appeal one additional required Regents exam score in that 60 to 64 range. So this question stated, I know that English language learners can appeal English language arts and one other exam to get a Regents diploma. Can English language learners who use the appeal for the ELA exam still appeal to other exams to get a local diploma? Now, this really highlights the complexity of our current requirements with the flexibility of COVID added on top of an already complex system. So the answer to this question depends on the types of appeals that the student was granted. Those special appeals can be applied to all diploma types, and there's no maximum number of special appeals that students can use. If we're talking about the traditional appeals, that traditional appeal for our English language learners does lead to the local diploma. Even if it's the only traditional appeal they needed to use, they would still be earning that local diploma. And with the traditional appeals, students can only use a maximum of 2 traditional appeals. Another question about supporting our multilingual learners or English language learners. What are we doing for the ENL multilingual students who are unable to pass the New York State Regents exams? Are there any plans in place or safety nets? So at this time, the following assessment flexibilities may apply to our English language learners. We have the appeal for English language learners, which we just discussed. There are testing accommodations for English language learners that are posted on the Office of Bilingual Education and World Languages website. It's also linked on this slide. And then if students are coming in to New York State for the first time in grade 11 or grade 12. Remember about those assessment exemptions from global if they're entering in grade 11 or grade 12, and then also from science if they're coming in grade 12. And that information is also located towards the end of the presentation when we talk about our transfer students. So our safety net options for students with disabilities are eligible students with disabilities. So that is all students with an IEP and students with a 504 plan if safety net eligibility is documented in their plan, and also students who have been declassified from special education if the Committee on Special Education recommended the student maintain their safety net eligibility upon declassification. So these students can earn the local diploma via the low pass safety net, which allows them to essentially use a score of 55 or above as a passing Regents exam score. These students can also appeal up to 2 Regents exams using the traditional appeals of scores in the 52 to 54 range. And then the compensatory safety net allows eligible students to meet the assessment requirements by compensating Regents exam scores in the 45 to 54 range. That lower score can be on any required Regents exam except for English or math, with a score of 65 or higher on another required Regents exam. Students must have an earned score of 65 or higher to use that compensatory safety net, so they couldn't use an exemption as that earned score of 65 or higher. They couldn't use a special appeal. They would have to have that earned score of 65 or higher to use the compensatory safety net. And then we had the superintendent determination of a local diploma. This only applies to our students with current IEPs. So it does not apply to our declassified students or students with 504 plans. The student must have earned the required course credits. They must have satisfied the assessment requirements in English and math or earned the CDOS commencement credential. They must have participated in all the required Regents exams. So if they're earning the CDOS, that would be 4, 1 in English, 1 in math, 1 in science, 1 in social studies. They must demonstrate their competency in the subject areas where they're unable to earn a passing or appealable score on the Regents exam. And then we also need that written request from the student's parent or person in parental relation for the superintendent to make their determination of the local diploma. Lots of questions related to the superintendent determination. The first is what coursework is required to be eligible for the superintendent determination option. So in addition to the other eligibility conditions, students have to earn the required diploma credits to be eligible for this option. So they would have to satisfy the 22 units of credit. For the superintendent's determination, do students need to pass both the ELA and math Regents exams with a score between 52 and 54? So eligible students have to satisfy the assessment requirements in both English and math or earn the CDOS commencement credential. So if our students aren't able to earn a passing or appealable score on English or math, then they would need that CDOS commencement credential to be eligible for the superintendent determination option. Historically, this option was only available for students in science and social studies. With the adoption of the CDOS as a pathway, the board also approved this to be accepted in lieu of a passing or appealables or appeal granted in English and or mathematics. So they could use the CDOS for both, but they would need it if they're not able to earn a passing or appealable score in either English or math. And then can a student use their CDOS to support a superintendent's determination for the Algebra 1 Regents and use the CDOS as their pathway? And that is a yes. It can serve both of those purposes. And then can a student receive multiple determinations? And that is a yes. So the superintendent could make a determination in multiple disciplines. As long as the student has earned the CDOS commencement credential, a review could be done in all 4 disciplines: English, math, science, and social studies. Another question related to the superintendent determination option: can parents request a superintendent's determination for students who have significantly modified curriculum and who have not passed or come close to passing any Regents exams? So students do have to earn those 22 units of credit, or 44 for New York City schools, to be eligible for this option. There is no minimum Regents exam score that is required. I do also like to highlight that the eligibility conditions for the superintendent determination option are just that, eligibility conditions. Ultimately, it is the superintendent who determines if the student has demonstrated their proficiency in the learning standards, even though they weren't able to earn a passing or appealable score on one or more of the Regents exams. So this is really an option for students who are demonstrating their proficiency in the coursework, in all of their coursework, but they're struggling to pass those Regents exams. Okay, our endorsements and seals. This is just a nice representation of the endorsements and seals that can be added to students' diplomas and the diploma types that they can be added to. So any diploma type, students can earn the technical endorsement. In addition to, they would need to successfully complete a NYSED approved CTE program to do that. And that does include the 3-part technical assessment. So any student who is earning the CTE pathway is also earning the technical endorsement. Our seal of civic readiness can be added to all 3 diploma types. Our seal of biliteracy can be added to either the Regents diploma or the Regents with advanced designation. And then we have our honors endorsement, which can also be added to those 2 diploma types, and mastery in math or mastery in science, which can be added only to the advanced Regents diploma. So with the exemptions due to COVID, we did have to change the computation for the honors endorsement. Our goal was to hold kids harmless as much as possible. So if students have exemptions due to COVID, the calculation or computation for that honors endorsement is dependent upon the number of scored Regents exams the student has. So if they have a minimum of 3 scored Regents exams applicable to the diploma type, so that's 5 assessments for the Regents diploma and 8 for the advanced Regents, then the exemptions due to COVID are removed from the calculation, and the computed average of the Regents exam scores required are, if it equals 90 or above, they have earned that honors endorsement. So you're just taking those exemptions right out of that computation. And then when our students have fewer than 3 earned scores applicable to the diploma type again, the student's final course grade for each exempted Regents exam can be substituted in that computation for honors. And now if the computed average combining those final course grades and the earned scores on the Regents exams equals 90 or above, the student has earned the honors endorsement. When students have more earned scores and/or exemptions than are required for the diploma type, you may use the most beneficial combination of earned scores and/or exemptions for that student. And our mastery endorsement, again, with the exemptions due to COVID, we had to add some additional eligibility conditions. So students have to meet the requirements for earning a Regents diploma with advanced designation to be eligible for mastery. And the traditional requirement is for them to pass those 3 math and/or 3 science Regents exams with an earned score of 85 or better to earn that mastery in math and/or mastery in science. With the first round of exemptions, we added the second eligibility condition, which allows students to pass 2 math and/or 2 science Regents exams with that earned score of 85 or better, and also have an exemption on a 3rd math and/or a 3rd science Regents exam to earn that mastery endorsement. And then with the continued exemptions, we added the 3rd condition where students could pass 1 math and/or 1 science Regents exam with that 85 or better, and then have a final course average of 85 or better in 2 additional math or 2 additional science courses that culminated in a Regents exam for which they were granted an exemption. And we did have a question from you related to special appeals and endorsements. In years that students could have received a special appeal on a Regents exam, can a student who passed the Regents but didn't receive an 85 or above use the course grade instead of the Regents score to be considered for mastery or honors. If a student has a special appeal and needed that special appeal to satisfy the assessment requirements for their diploma type, then the earned score on the Regents exam must be used in the determination for mastery and the computation for honors. So the only time when you can substitute that final course average is when the student has an exemption. The only exception to that is the June 2021 administration period, and that was where students had the option to either take the Regents exam or take an exemption. So in that case, you can use either the earned score or the final course average, whichever is more beneficial to the student. Okay, on to our transfer students. If the transfer credit is coming from a registered New York State high school or a state agency, you must award that transfer credit. For any other educational or cultural institution, it's a local decision. The principal can award credit if, after consulting with relevant faculty, you deem that the coursework is aligned to the high school learning standards and comparable to coursework that would have been done in your high school. This is the reminder about the out-of-state assessment exemptions. So if a student is entering from out of state or out of country in grade 11 or re-entering after having been enrolled for 3 or fewer semesters in a New York State high school, they can be exempted from the Global History and Geography Regents exam. So they would meet the assessment requirements for the Regents or local diploma by passing a Regents or NYSED approved Regents alternative in English, math, science, and US history. And if a student is entering for the first time in grade 12, again, or re-entering after being enrolled for 3 or fewer semesters, they can also be exempted from the science assessment requirement, and they could meet the requirements for the Regents or local diploma using one assessment in English, math, and then US history. And here on this slide, you also see the reminder about the flexibility in the social studies credits, where the principal can exempt these students from the 2 units of credit requirement in global history and geography by substituting any other 2 credits in social studies. This is just a reminder about our interstate compact for military children. The goal of the compact is on-time graduation for our students. It does allow flexibility for students who are transitioning due to military status. And probably the area that impacts the diploma requirements the most is the assessment flexibility. So students who are covered under the Interstate Compact, you can accept exams required for graduation in the sending state, national norm referenced achievement test, and end of course local assessments for these students. There is a communication process from the sending school principal to the receiving New York State school principal, where the sending principal is completing an attestation form. All of that information can be found on our Interstate Compact webpage, and there's an FAQ there as well if you have additional questions. Another question from you, this related to the high school equivalency diploma. So there is another office that provides guidance related to the HSE diploma. The question was, how do the COVID flexibilities, exemptions, and special appeals impact the Regents HSE exam pathway? And our students can use exemptions from the Regents exams and special appeals in place of the corresponding HSE exam subject test in that Regents HSE exam pathway. If you have additional questions, I do encourage you to reach out to the HSE office because they are the experts in that area. Our 2 exiting credentials, we have the CDAWS exiting credential. Both of these are available. No, excuse me. The CDAWS is now available to all students since its adoption as a pathway. Previously, only students in special education could exit school with the CDAWS as an exiting credential. The student, as we mentioned earlier, has attempted but wasn't able to successfully complete the requirements for the local or Regents diploma. They did complete the requirements for the CDAWS commencement credential. They may exit with this as an exiting credential. As I said earlier, it is not equivalent to a diploma. We want to make sure that our students and families are well aware of that. And we cannot issue either of these exiting credentials prior to a student attending school for at least 12 years, excluding kindergarten. And here's our skills and achievement commencement credential. This is available to our students with disabilities who are assessed using the New York State alternate assessment. Similar to the CDOS, it must be accompanied with documentation of the student's skills, strengths, levels of independence, and the skills that they're going to use post-secondary. And just like the CDOS as an exiting credential, it can be issued anytime after the student has attended school for at least the 12 years, excluding kindergarten. This question has been popping up a lot lately, and that is an ask to describe the relationship between the CDOS and partially or fully alternately assessed students. So in exceptional instances where a student with a disability is recommended by the Committee on Special Education to participate in the state's alternate assessment only for selected subject areas, so they're taking that alternate assessment in some subject areas and they're taking Regents exams in others. If those students complete the requirements for the CDOS commencement credential, then they may earn the credential as an exiting credential. Otherwise, if the student is fully assessed using the New York State alternate assessment, they're not eligible to earn the CDOS. And just some updates that I thought might be helpful in your work. We did recently update guidance related to the compensatory safety net to clarify that exemptions and special appeals satisfy the requirement for students to meet the assessment requirements in English or mathematics. We've also recently updated the CDOS FAQ and the work-based learning manual. We've revised the superintendent determination form. It is now an editable PDF, hopefully makes your work a little easier. It does also clarify that exemptions also satisfy the requirement for students to meet the assessment requirements in English and or mathematics. We recently created a new web page on the Office of Standards and Instructions site. And that is a graduation requirements FAQ. So previously you had to go to many different places to find frequently asked questions related to different topics around the diploma requirements. And it is our hope that this is a one-stop shop for all your questions related to the diploma requirements. So it's organized as an accordion. You'll see blue bars with each of the topics that you see here. So if you're looking for information related to endorsements and seals, you would just click on that blue bar and you'll see all of the frequently asked questions related to that topic area. Just a reminder that April is the month of the military child, and we encourage you to join the Education Department and the Military Interstate Children's Compact Commission as we celebrate our military children, not only on April 17th, but also throughout the month of April. If you need additional information or you'd like to share your celebration ideas with the department, I encourage you to do that, and you can find information on the Month of the Military Child webpage. Just a reminder about the SIRS 340 and 341. This is a level 2 report that does allow you to quickly see a summary of the assessment requirements that your students have attempted or met, and it will also project the diploma type. We do like to remind you that this is informational only and could never replace the knowledge that our counselors have of their students. We also have translated resources. We did get a question about updated charts. So the purple chart is the most current chart. You see that pictured here in the first picture. There haven't been any updates to that to our diploma requirements since, so that will not be updated at this time. But both of these resources are available in the languages that you see here. The resource in the front is a 2-pager. So on the front, it has the credit distribution table, reminders about pathways, appeals, and then on the back, it has all of the assessment requirements. And then set in the back is more of a narrative form, which explains all of the different diploma types and the requirements that are needed. So if you're looking for a specific diploma, let's say you're looking for the local diploma for English language learner, you can easily find that within that narrative form and see what the requirements are for that specific diploma type. We also have resources for students and families. 3 flyers. One is just understanding the current diploma requirements. The second is additional options, which includes our traditional appeals. And then the third is probably outdated at this point, which is understanding exemptions due to COVID. In the middle, we have our tracking tool. That's an editable PDF. It's a great way for students and families to insert the requirements that they've met so far, and they have a nice visual to see what requirements remain in order for them to earn their diploma. And then we also have presentation materials. If you would like to provide a presentation to your students and families, we do encourage you to modify those materials to include any local diploma requirements that you may have that go beyond the state's requirements, but they are there and available for you if you'd like to use them. We did get a lot of questions related to the Graduation Measures Initiative. So the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission on Graduation Measures were presented at the November Board of Regents meeting. Right now, our current requirements remain in effect. Any changes that are going to happen would need to be approved by the Board of Regents. I do encourage you to subscribe to this listserv, which is linked here, for updates related to the Graduation Measures Initiative, because as soon as information is made public, you would get that right to your inbox. So one of those questions, when might we expect our current graduation requirements to be officially changed? So changes to the current requirements, as I said, do need to be approved by the Board of Regents. In the coming months, the department will begin its work to develop proposed guidance, programmatic updates, regulatory changes to address the Regents' goals and priorities related to those recommendations from the Blue Ribbon Commission. If you're interested, keep an eye on the Board of Regents agendas to see when those updates will be provided. And this, I also believe, touches upon the graduation measures work, and it was an ask to know more about the financial literacy and high school requirements. So while schools can provide financial literacy instruction, and many do, there is not currently a state requirement for students to earn diploma credit in financial literacy. The Blue Ribbon Commission on Graduation Measures recommended that diploma credit requirements must include financial literacy education. So more to come on that. And as I said earlier, I just encourage you to subscribe for those updates related to the Grad Measures Initiative. So I'm going to take your questions, just so you know, because I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see you. There is contact information here for other offices within the State Education Department. Some of your questions did branch out into other offices. Like there was a question related to certification. I'm not the best resource for that, but you can reach out to the Office of Teaching Initiatives. You can also, if you just Google school counselor certification, NYSED, you'll see there's a page related to those changes where you can probably find most of the information that you're looking for. And then this is my contact information. I do value the work that you do immensely, and I know that while our current requirements are complicated and probably take up a lot of your time, I know it's one tiny little drop in the bucket of the work that you do every day with our students. So I just want to give a huge thank you and shout out to all of our school counselors, administrators, others who are joining us today. Thank you for supporting our students. And now I am going to stop sharing and hopefully give you a chance to talk.
Melissa, I have a question.
Robert had his hand up first.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to, I just was trying
That's okay, Vincent.
I was just trying to, the listserv link, is that something that can be in the chat? I wasn't able to click on it during the, sorry to make you add that, but if that's possible.
Absolutely.
I was trying to search for it and I couldn't find it online, so I figured I would ask. Thanks.
Sure.
That was it.
Jennifer.
Hi, I was wondering, I asked it in the chat. For a student whose parents requesting a superintendent determination, they have an IEP, they have the 22 credits that we're talking about. Do they need to sit for the Regents exams 2 times in order to get that superintendent determination, or can they sit for once and the parent writes the request?
So there's no state requirement for students to sit more than once to be eligible for the superintendent determination option. But like I said, those are eligibility conditions, and
Mhm.
schools can require things that go beyond what the state requires. So I would just recommend having a conversation with the superintendent to make sure that they're not looking for that student to attempt more than once.
Thank you.
Sure.
Melissa, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I've been reading about alternative assessments other than Regents exams, which are created and approved by the school district. Can you expand on that a little bit, or is that not coming to the forefront?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I've been reading where there are alternative assessments that are created and approved by departments and school districts in lieu of a Regents exam. Could be a project, it could be some other assessment other than a Regents exam. Now, I know that hasn't actually happened as of yet, but I understand that some schools are testing it this year.
So I think you're referring to the plan pilot.
Potentially,
I can
yes.
put a link to that, the webpage. And we do also have, there are some schools, known as consortium schools that use performance-based assessment in lieu of some of the Regents requirements, but we're not currently approving any more of those consortium schools at this time. It's really, I think, a waiting game to see how the diploma requirements change based on the Regents' priorities around the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission. But I did stick a link to the plan pilot in the chat, if that's helpful. I know
Yes,
that
thank you.
the performance-based assessment was included in the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission as well.
I'm seeing one in the chats. It says, with an NX in PE where a student fails during one term and is making up for the second term, but is not currently sitting in the same teacher's class, be able to make up the PE credit in an alternative way. Students already have a full day of classes during a makeup term. When and how could the credit be made up?
Hi,
So-
that was my question.
Oh, hi, Erica.
Hi.
I know it's complicated. We have I guess this keeps coming up in my particular school, where students get an NX in a course because they're dealing with some sort of either medical or mental health issue. So the teacher gives them the NX for the semester course, right, where they would normally earn a credit. So they didn't earn the credit yet. It's like an incomplete. And then to make it up for the next semester, somehow they have to do that on top of their already full schedule. And some of our PE teachers have asked, like, how are they supposed to, instruct the student or assess the student if there's no room in their day to assess or, does that make sense, the question? So I guess I was just wondering if there was an approved alternate way, to get that, especially for PE, because the other classes, the kids seem to be able to make up either virtually or they can, hand things in online, whereas PE is more of a physical, you kind of have to see what they're doing, type of assessment.
So because makeup programs are locally developed, it's really, the ball is in your court as to how you design a program to meet that student's needs.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And the PE pun was not intended.
No, I appreciate it. It's just, yeah, we need someone at our school to to create a plan.
Are New York State high schools permitted to remove Regents exams from a transcript completely?
So that's a no, but the only state requirement in terms of students' transcript are the assessment scores that are needed for the diploma type. So in the case of the Regents or local diploma, that would be the 4+1. And then for advanced designation, a maximum of 8. So if a student takes additional Regents exams beyond what's required for the diploma type, there's no state requirement that those scores appear on the student's transcripts. But if they are required for the diploma type, the scores would have to be there.
Scrolling.
I'm a really bad multitasker, so I'm sorry. If I don't answer your questions, we can create a document with all of the Q&As and we'll make sure that we get to everybody.
Cool.
Hi, this is Monica Mann. May I ask a question, please?
Sure.
I know you probably went through this and I'm sorry because I was in and out, but I have a student who took the math regions 3 times. Highest score was a 46. He is currently in our CTE program and will also be gaining the CDOS at the end of his 2nd year. Would his parents be able to complete the superintendent determination to be eligible to receive the regions, or does he have to take the math regions for the 4th time to try to score a 55 or higher?
Does he have an IEP?
Yes.
So he would be eligible for that superintendent determination option. It does lead to the local diploma. But remember, both the local and the Regents diplomas are both New York State high school diplomas.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Jennifer's got her hand up.
Hi, I also have a question for students with an IEP. So if they get the safety net options if they have an IEP, however, if in high school a parent revokes special education services, meaning that they are no longer allowed to have an IEP or they've taken away those services, do those safety net options stay with the student, or are they retroactive to like if that happened in 11th grade, would it be retroactive until 9th grade? Is that question making sense?
So safety net options, not the superintendent determination, but the safety nets do remain with students as long as the CSE clarifies that they should maintain those flexibilities.
Okay, so that would have to be on the PWN, the prior rate notice. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Sure.
I have a
Any more?
question about
Betty? Is that Betty?
transfer credit. So if we get a student who's like a mid-year transfer, in the let's say right now, and their previous school was like a year-long course, how would you award credit? Like let's say if the student has been failing so far, how would somebody award credit based on what they've been doing and the work that they could be doing at our school?
Can I ask you to repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, it was badly worded.
No,
So
no. It was me trying to read the chat and listen at the same time.
if we got a student transferring in who just moved today or next week, and we have their report card, but they haven't received credits yet,
Mhm.
and they're like currently failing, are there guidelines around whether or not to award credit?
So awarding credit is dependent upon the student's ability to demonstrate their proficiency in the learning outcomes for the course. So as long as you are able to provide the opportunity for them to do that and they're able to demonstrate that proficiency, you can award that credit. But if they're not able to do that in the time that you have left with them, then they would need to make a program or an alternate credit in lieu of that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Lolita?
Yes, hi. I'm sorry, I tuned in a little late, so you may have mentioned this. I have a question. New York State requires that students have 2 credits of physical education to meet their New York State requirement. If a student exceeds that, have more than 2 credits, can that gym credit be used as an elective?
Absolutely. Yes, it can.
So does it make a difference if it's the same course? Sometimes gyms are just physical education. Sometimes they have different names. Does that matter?
So, that's a good question. Students can't receive duplicate credit. So as long as the learning outcome for the courses vary, it wouldn't matter. But locally, you would have to determine like what are the learning outcomes for the courses. As long as they're different, then the student is fine to earn that credit. Something else to
Okay, so
mention,
long.
you can never accelerate a student's physical education credits, so they have to earn that quarter credit for each semester they're enrolled. So you couldn't have them double up in an effort to just get it done earlier. They would need to maintain that enrollment, but they could double up in an effort to earn elective credit.
Correct. So the student will have to have physical education every year by law, no matter what, they have to have it every year.
That's correct, yeah. Until the end of their
Okay.
senior year.
Correct. And the course will have to be different names, or the content has to be a little different for them to use it as an elective credit, but it can be used as an elective credit.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And can I have a two-part question?
Sure.
Okay, for our E&L students, 55 being the baseline on all opportunities for them to graduate with a high school diploma?
So if they do not have an IEP or a 504 plan, that 55 to 59 can only be used on the English regions.
Correct. So at no time can you score less than a 55 on the English region, and no matter which way you get a high school diploma.
Only our students with disabilities could. So students with IEPs can use that superintendent determination option, and there's no minimum score required there. And then students with IEPs or students with 504 plans can appeal the score in the 52 to 54 range.
Oh, for ELA. Oh, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Sure. And just to clarify, for the superintendent determination option for ELA, if a student's not able to earn that 52, the student would have to earn the CDOS commencement credential to be eligible for that.
Right. Okay.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hello.
Sure.
I see Jennifer has her hand up.
I'm not sure if I'm. Can you
Hi.
hear me?
Oh, there's two people speaking at the same time, I think.
I see Jennifer's hand is up, and then we'll go to Sandy next if that works.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
So I just wanted to, I did put this information in the chat, and I wanted to specifically address the PTEC programs throughout New York State, especially because there's so many more kind of coming on board as the years go on. Going back to the phys ed issue, all high school students participating in a PTEC project do not have to complete 4 years of PE if they complete their high school requirements before the end of that 4 years. I think the Board of Regents made that determination back in 2017 and a memo. And I just wanted to make that clear because, you know, your presentation mentioned that there's no exemptions or exceptions to that PTEC or to the PE issue. So I don't want anybody on the call feeling like, you know, because the question that you posed was if a student attends a community college, do they have to complete those phys ed credits? And it's sort of like a little bit, you know, because our PTEC students do complete degrees at community colleges. So I just wanted a clarification on that.
Thank you for that. So yes, you're correct. If a student completes all of their high school requirements, they would not need to continue their enrollment in physical education. So the two instances where students could graduate with fewer than 22 units of credit both relate to physical education. And I was thinking this, but I don't think I finished my thought. So the first is where our students are coming in from out of state or out of country, and they don't need to meet that full 2 credit requirement. And then the second instance is our students who accelerate their graduation and have satisfied all the other diploma requirements before the end of their 8th semester. They would only need to earn that quarter credit for each semester they're enrolled.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, Melissa.
Thank you.
Can I piggyback on that question? Because I think the clarification is, and the person who asked the question can clarify, is your student who is dual enrolled in community college still in high school? Because unless that student has graduated from high school, even though they're taking their coursework as dual enrollment, they still have to complete PE. Am I correct?
I know there's some exceptions for P-TECH. So there's another office that's really the expert there. But if the student is still enrolled in your district and they're using that community college coursework to satisfy their high school diploma requirements, then they would still need that physical education credit.
Okay, thank you.
I can reach out to the P-TECH office too, just to make sure that we're all speaking the same language.
Laura has her hand.
Yes, hello.
Hey,
I
Sandy,
see.
go for it.
Yeah.
I'm so
Hello.
sorry. I'm so
Oh.
sorry. I just want, and I thank you all for taking your time because this is all very informative. I just want to make sure I didn't misunderstand. So, I heard a couple of times during the course of this webinar that if a student is receiving CDOS credit or working towards CDOS accreditation, I have a student who is currently only missing a math region score. So he is a IEP student in his 5th year, has met all other requirements, and is currently working towards CDOS credit to equal or to stand in place of that math region score with the superintendent's approval at the end of this semester. Would that child, if he is approved by the superintendent, and not, if he did not pass another attempt at the math regions this June, if he got the CDOS accreditation by our local superintendent, would he be college bound? Would he earn the local equivalent on the diploma?
He could earn the local diploma through that superintendent determination option, as long as
Okay.
he earns that CDOS.
Okay, so that was my question. I thank you.
Sure.
Okay, last question, Laura Hyde.
Hello. So I'll take my video off. I'm stuck with a student, but I think I have researched everything. She is a Chinese student. She did not come from China though. She moved here from New York City in 9th grade, and they only speak Mandarin at home. And the only regions she hasn't been able to get through is ELA. She passed the US history with a 68, and she passed her other regions with special appeals. I have thought outside the box. I've even reached out to SUNY Oswego asking for, students of the Chinese club and student organization, do they have any tutors, so they did reach out to me. It's not happening yet. So I don't know what to do. She doesn't have an IEP, so I feel we can't use the CDOS through the superintendent determination, right? Because it's just for students with an IEP.
That's correct.
And I have looked at everything I possibly can. She has moved. I mean, she got a 26 and then a 32, and now her last score was a 46, but that's the highest she's gotten. I don't know what else. So is the only option, if she does not get through it, the CDOS exiting credential?
How old is she?
She is 18.
Okay. So remember, she does have time. Students can continue their enrollment through the end of the school year, in which they turn 21. Probably not what she wants to hear. She is making progress.
She's not a special ed student though.
She would need the 60.
Yeah, she would need
Yeah.
the 60. She's not a special ed student, so she can't go until 21, right?
No, she can. Yeah.
Oh,
so-
she can?
Yep.
Oh,
All students
okay.
educational
I
entitlement.
guess I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah.
I've had second year seniors, but I didn't realize it was 21. Okay. Yeah, and she's already been accepted to a college out of state. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been trying everything and thinking outside the box, but
Have you tried reaching out to the Arburns,
the what?
the Arburns or the Office of Bilingual Ed?
I did send an email because I got an email from, it may have been from you, an email address, and I did email them and they said someone would get back to me, but I haven't heard back. So
Okay.
that was a few weeks ago. So waiting to hear from them as well. I'm hoping one of the college tutors will work out, in the meantime, because she has increased her grade, each time, and she's been in Read 180 3 times a week. But I'm like, she got a 68 on the US history, and that's writing and, but I know it's not as much comprehension as the ELA, and the language, I do really feel is an issue. I mean, I'm really being able to communicate with her much better this year than the last 3 years, and she has to interpret for her family who comes in. So I just feel bad for her. I feel, and she's got like a 90 average. She does well in school, but just struggling here. Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't
I'm
miss
sorry.
anything.
I wish I had better news.
That's okay. Thank you.
So I got
me?
4:28.
Oh.
I think we're gonna close our meeting. We're gonna thank Melissa Montague for spending the last hour and a half with us. So much went by, so much information. We're gonna share the slide deck as well as the other materials that we get, and a link to the video if you want to rewatch it. It'll be on our YouTube channel if you want to share it with your friends. Donna, do you have anything to add?
I just want to say thank you, everyone, for hanging in till 4:30, and have a good evening. And thank you, Melissa, for all this wonderful information.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.